Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and in this video I am going to introduce my Agatha Christie read-through project. Now, I've mentioned in videos in the past that I am doing a read-through of all of Agatha Christie's work. Her mysteries. I'm not including the work that she did as Mary Westmacott in this read-through. So I'm reading all of her work that she did as Agatha Christie. Let's say that. I've read 27 of her books now in order, and so I thought now would be a great time to introduce this project that I'm doing. I'm a little late to the game with this introduction video, but I just thought I want to make this an official series on this channel, so I might as well do an introduction video. I love Agatha Christie. She is my favorite writer, and I wanted to do a read-through of her work in order of publication for a number of reasons. One, because I love Agatha Christie and I want to read them again, and there are still some Agatha Christie's that I haven't read yet, and so I thought if I do a read-through project, I will catch the ones that I've missed. But I also had a few other things in my mind. I wanted to look at how she progresses as a writer from her earliest works until her latest works. I mean, her last few books were published just a few years before she died, when she was in her 70s. And so I think it's interesting to look at the life of a writer and see how it goes. I also wanted to really start to grasp the Agatha Christie universe. I wanted to read her books through that lens, looking at this universe that she's created. And one thing I've discovered already, actually, having read 27 books, is that she writes all of her books, no matter who the main characters are, in the same universe. Because I have noticed connections not just between, let's say, Poirot books, various Poirot books. You will see connections to previous Poirot books, but there are connections from, let's say, Poirot books to Marple books, or to books with Colonel Race, or to standalones. And so I like to keep my eye on that, on the Agatha Christie universe, and see where those connections are. And so in the book that I'm about to talk about, there are some really interesting connections in the Agatha Christie universe. So to keep track of all of this stuff, I have my handy-dandy Agatha Christie notebook. I thought this was a great notebook to use for my Agatha Christie project because she was a great traveler, and a number of her books are set in other countries in the world, and so I thought this was a great notebook to use for my Agatha Christie project. So as I read, I keep my eye on how she progresses as a writer. I'm also watching out for what was her golden year? Does she have a golden year, or like couple of years? Like, is there like a year or two where she put out just her absolute best work? Can I find Agatha Christie's golden year? And I'm also keeping my eye out on the Agatha Christie universe, building up that universe. I make note of that. I'm also doing a little bit of a study into the types of detectives that she writes. So what sort of a detective is Poirot, for example? And so one thing that I've been noticing for him, he doesn't often speak of justice in the books that are Poirot books. There are far more discussions about truth. Truth seems to be very important to Poirot. So at this point, I'm not done reading through all of the Poirot books yet, but at this point, I am happy to say that Poirot seems to be a truth seeker, because the result of the case, whether or not the person who is guilty gets arrested and put on trial and put in jail, doesn't seem to be as important for Poirot as discovering and revealing the truth. For Miss Marple, on the other hand, she seems to be much more of a justice seeker. Justice is very important to her. She calls herself Nemesis. Others call her Nemesis, and Nemesis is the goddess of justice and retribution. So that's very important to her. She has a very strong sense of justice as well. Although for her and for Poirot, that doesn't necessarily mean having the criminal arrested and tried and put in jail. Sometimes for them it seems to mean as long as the result is acceptable to them. So there are times when they allow the murderer to kill themselves rather than be captured, and that seems to be acceptable to them as detectives. So anyway, that's the types of things that I'm looking for as I do this read through. And so I'm going to insert a clip right now of my current rankings. So I have now read 27 Agatha Christie books. Her first book was published in 1920, and her 27th book that I just finished, Murder in Mesopotamia, came out in 1936. So she was, I would say, fairly prolific. She would churn out like 2 or 3 books a year sometimes. And so I'm going to put that clip in now of looking at my current rankings where they stand, focusing on my current top 10 and my current bottom 5. So this is my current rankings of the Agatha Christie that I've read so far. I have read 27, as you can see. And then I'm going to zoom in here so that you can get a better idea of how I've ranked these books. I'm not going to go through all 27, so what I'm going to do is highlight my current top 10 and my current bottom 5. So currently at the number 1 spot is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Number 2, Murder on the Orient Express. Number 3, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Number 4, The Murder at the Vicarage. Number 5, Death in the Clouds. Number 6, The ABC Murders. Number 7, The Boomerang Clue, also called Why Didn't They Ask Evans. Number 8, Lord Edgware Dies. Number 9, The Man in the Brown Suit. And number 10, Peril at End House. And I'm going to scan down to the bottom. I'll go slow so that you can see for yourself how I've ranked what's in the middle. And then the bottom 5 are The Hound of Death, The Listerdale Mystery, Secret of Chimneys, The Mysterious Mr. Quinn, and The Big Four. So I guess unsurprisingly there are a number of short story collections in my current bottom 5, and that's just because short stories aren't my favorite anyway. And then The Big Four is currently at the bottom because I really did not like that one. I love Poirot and I love Hastings, but I felt that book as a whole was just a hot mess. So yeah, that's my current rankings as they stand with me having read 27 books. The Agatha Christie that I've just finished reading is Murder in Mesopotamia. This is a Poirot mystery, and as I said, it was published in 1936. This edition that I have is a Dell edition from 1970, and I quite like this edition actually. I like the green, I like that they made the edge of the paper green, and I love the synopsis on the back. From beyond the tomb, in the fabled Near East, where once the mighty empire of Babylon held sway and now the eternal desert ruled, the members of a scientific expedition trembled in the tightening grip of terror. Already one of them, a beautiful woman with a mysterious past, lay dead. All signs pointed to a murderer not of this world, a diabolical murderer who was preparing to strike again. It was at this point that the inimitable Hercule Poirot arrived to embark on this, his most dangerous and baffling case. What I love about that synopsis is how dramatic it is. I love that. But it's also not how I would give a synopsis of this story. So I find that a little bit interesting. So Murder in Mesopotamia, this takes place in Iraq. And it's narrated by someone called Amy Leatherin. She is a nurse who was there and a witness to the events that occurred. And so this is not a book where Hastings is present. So rather than have Poirot narrate, which I don't think she ever does have a book. I don't think I've come across one so far. Anyway, but Amy Leatherin is the narrator in this book. And the victim is Louise Ledner. And what makes her an interesting victim is that she believed that she was going to be killed. So this takes place at an archaeological dig in Iraq. It's in Hassanaya. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. But Dr. Ledner is leading this archaeological dig, and Louise Ledner is his wife. And she has been receiving letters that are threatening. She is freaking out because she believes that she sees faces in the window in her room, and she is just very nervy and upset. And so Dr. Ledner wants a nurse to come and take care of his wife and make sure she's okay. And that nurse turns out to be Amy Leatherman. This is a Poirot book where he is not in the full book. He arrives at the dig on page 80, and the book is 223 pages, so that's not bad. But there are actually a lot of scenes where Poirot isn't actually in the book. So Mrs. Ledner is the victim. She is found killed in her room. She appears to have been knocked on the head by something pretty heavy. Dr. Ledner discovers her body, and it's one of those books that has maps and stuff. I love that. Let's see if I can find. They do a map of their compound. So, as far as the Agatha Christie universe goes, on page 77 in the book, Dr. Ledner is asked by Dr. Riley, who is like a hospital doctor, if he has ever heard of Hercule Poirot. And Ledner says that he had once heard of a Mr. Van Alden speak highly of Poirot. And what's interesting there is Van Alden is the father of the victim from The Mystery of the Blue Train in 1928. So that's an interesting connection. The Mystery of the Blue Train is a Poirot mystery. Also interesting, or maybe it makes sense, but both Ledner and Van Alden are Americans. And so Van Alden has heard of, Ledner has heard of Van Alden. He heard Van Alden speak very highly of Poirot, and that's you know, a reference to The Mystery of the Blue Train. Something very interesting now in the world of Agatha Christie, the universe, is that in that book, The Mystery of the Blue Train, Jane, the main character Jane, refers to a village called St. Mary Mead a few times. She never refers to a Miss Marple, but she refers to St. Mary Mead, and that, of course, is where Miss Marple lives. So that's an interesting connection between Poirot and Miss Marple, and proof that in the Agatha Christie universe, they all live in that universe. Anyway, I did note a couple of interesting passages here in on page 78 8. Dr. Ledner shook his head gravely. No, no, nurse, you've nothing to reproach yourself with, he said slowly. It's I, God forgive me, who am to blame. I didn't believe. All along, I didn't believe. I didn't dream for one moment that there was any real danger. He got up, his face twitched. I let her go to her death. Yes, I let her go to her death, not believing. He staggered out of the room. Dr. Riley looked at me. I feel pretty culpable too, he said. I thought the good lady was playing on his nerves. I didn't take it really seriously either, I confessed. So we were all three wrong, said Dr. Riley gravely. So it seems, said Captain Maitland. And then later in the book, there is a reference to truth in relation to Poirot on page 137. Poirot says, do not make me the British cliches, Poirot begged. Do not say it is not the cricket or the football, that to speak anything but well of the dead is not done. That, enfant, there is loyalty. Loyalty is a pestilential thing in crime. Again and again, it obscures the truth. So, Murder in Mesopotamia, I ranked it as number 14 currently on my list. It was a very good Agatha Christie. I enjoyed it, but there are others that were much better. Poirot wasn't in it quite as much, and there were times where you felt like that you didn't know everything the detective knew, and that's a pretty important thing especially in golden age detective fiction is kind of, it's one of the rules that you're supposed to know everything that the detective does. And in this book, it feels like maybe we didn't, like there were times where he went off and he was sending telegrams, but we didn't know who to or what he was thinking. And so although I think technically you could guess who the murderer is, this is not one of her best in that that if you look carefully at the clues, you can guess who it is. I think there are other books where she's done that better, where she's laid the clues subtly into the plot. So I did really enjoy this one, but it's not ever going to be one of my very favorites. So the next up in my Agatha Christie read-through is Cards on the Table. This also came out in 1936, and I'm very much looking forward to this. There's going to be a lot in here as far as the Agatha Christie universe, because in this book, 4 sleuths, Superintendent Battle of Scotland Yard, Miss Ariadne Oliver, famed writer of detective stories, Colonel Race of His Majesty's Secret Service, and the incomparable Hercule Poirot are invited to play bridge with 4 specially invited guests, each of whom had gotten away with murder. So just having those 4 detectives in the same room is fascinating to me, and I'm very much looking forward to this. This is actually an Agatha Christie that I have not ever read before, so that is also very exciting. So I will keep you up to date on my Agatha Christie read-through project. I hope you find this interesting. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are some of your favorite Agatha Christie's? Do you like Agatha Christie? And I also would find it very interesting to hear what are some of your least favorite Agatha Christie's. And I will see you for another video again soon. Bye!